Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is Real Talk with Coach Sherri. And I had an amazing conversation with my dad this morning. Oh my goodness. I it made me so happy to have this conversation with him. So my father has recently gotten a iPhone. He didn't have an iPhone before. He had some type of flip phone, he's of that age that they don't really get into the phones. And my niece got him an iPhone and he loves it because he's able to have the Bible app on it. And, he tries to FaceTime. He has Facebook. I also put YouTube on it, and I made sure he was subscribed to my channel. And so, let me roll the window up because it's loud outside. I'm sorry. And you guys, I'm so greasy because I'm trying not to touch my face as much. And because of that, I just feel weird. I don't know. I wash my hands all the time. I use a lot of sanitizer. But at any rate, so this morning I noticed that my father had called me. So I said, let me call my dad back. And when I did, he said, Sherri, last night when I was going to bed, and I don't know if he turned his phone on, opened it up or whatever, but when he got his phone and let's say he turned it on, he said, I started to hear your voice. And he said, I was like, wow, listen to her, and it was my YouTube channel, and I'm not sure what video he heard or saw or watched or whatever, but he said it made him so proud to, hear me, and he was excited to hear me as well. And that just made me smile and made me feel so good and so happy because you guys, let me tell you, my dad is my dude. He has always been. I am a daddy's girl. I am the youngest of three. I have two older brothers. And I just, I have such fond memories of my father growing up. I remember as a little girl, he would come home and my mother would make sure that my hair was done. I had nice clothes on. So no matter what I did, no matter what I got into that day, when he came home, I was always dressed up and, looked like a little girl. And he would take me. I remember him when he used to take me to this park, and I remember being on the swings, and it was just like the time for me and him, because my brothers are 8 and 9 years older than me, and so they had my father to themselves for a long time. But I just really love that time, and he is hilarious. So when I would have days off from school, like in middle school and high school, he would also take me and maybe one of my friends on the Circle Line. I don't know how many of you are from New York, like Manhattan area, but where I grew up was right across from the George Washington Bridge. So we would do a lot of things in Manhattan. But when I would have days off, sometimes he would take me and a friend on the Circle Line, which is a boat that goes on the Hudson, and it goes around the Statue of Liberty and stuff. And we would just kind of, enjoy the sights of Manhattan, eat lunch on there, and just kind of like be almost like a tourist. And we did that several times, often actually. I used to really love that. And he also used to take me to the Nets basketball games because, I loved basketball. I played basketball. And so he and I would go to Nets basketball games. Now, because of the way he worked in his business, he wasn't able to come to a lot of my games. I don't think he ever came to any of my basketball games. My mother always did, but I don't recall him coming. It was so hot. But yeah, he would take me to games, to the professional games, and I loved that time with him. But the funny thing is when sometimes, especially in high school, when I would have a day off, he would take me to the mall for lunch. I loved going to the mall for lunch. Back in the 80s, that was a big deal, going to the mall and having lunch, like eating there. It was good. The food was good. It was different. It was just something about it. It's not like how it is today where, it's just a common place. It's not a big deal, but back then it was a big deal. So we would go to lunch, have lunch, and he would let me go shopping. But he would never come in the store. So he would just stand outside the store. And if I saw something, I'd come out and tell him like, I might need $20 or $30, whatever. And he would give me the money and I would just go back in and buy it. Well, I remember one time I went into a store and I, was shopping, and I came out to, get money or whatever, and he was gone. And I was like, where did my dad go? So I started walking around, looking around, and I didn't see him. So I was like, wait, you know how sometimes, especially if you're in a big place and you with somebody, you can almost feel that that person is no longer in the building. Like, they left. And I felt that. I felt like, he left. I think he left. So this is before cell phones. So I had to find a pay phone, get my dime out or quarter, whatever it was at the time. I called the shop. And there was a man that my father grew up with that worked at the shop too. And I called him Uncle Charlie. My father was actually him and his wife's son's godfather. So they were like family. His wife and my mother grew up together. He and my dad grew up together. And him and his wife actually met at my parents' wedding because they both were in the wedding and they got married. And their son, my father and mother, became the godparents. But anyway, Uncle Charlie answers the phone to the shop. And I was like, Uncle Charlie, is my dad there? And he said, yeah, hold on. Hold on. No, you hold on. Like, what? What is he doing there? We was just at the mall together. And my father gets on the phone. He was like, hello. And I was like, Dad, you left me at the mall. And he was like, yeah, you were shopping. I had things to do. I had to get back. I was like, see. He said, you ready? Are you ready to come? I have somebody come and pick you up. You ready? I was like, yes. And so that's the kind of father that he was. He ain't, it was hilarious, when you think about it. He left me at the mall. So, my brothers have really funny stories about him. So because my parents owned the flower shop, we always had a van. And, it was like the work van. It was the delivery van or whatever. And a lot of times my father would bring it home. And so my brother said when my father used to take them to school in the morning, if the light was green and he was coming up to the corner by the school, he would tell them they had to go. And he would just slow the van down. He wouldn't stop. And so they had to grab their books and open the sliding door on the side and jump out with the van still rolling. That is so hilarious. That is so hilarious. It's funny. It's funny. Sometimes the way that we all grew up, the funny things that happened, it really shaped us into who we are. It made us resilient. It made us adaptable. It made us strong. And I really am so happy to have had the type of dad and mom that raised me, because that's how they made me. They didn't think nothing of it. It was just, it is what it is. I mean, my mother left me. I remember she went to the grocery store and I didn't prefer the grocery store. You know how when you were younger, for me anyway, I was always cold, and I always looked at the grocery store as being really cold inside, by the produce and the frozen foods or whatever. So when my mother would go, she would buy like $200 worth of groceries all the time. I mean, the basket would be overflowing. And I was just like, I just can't do it. So I would stay in the car. Nowadays, you can't stay in the car as a kid. But back then, in the 80s, you could. So I would stay in the car. Usually, I would have a really good book and I would just read. If we were at a strip mall, if the supermarket was at a strip mall, I would sometimes go to the stores and look around, like the Hallmark. I loved Hallmark stores. Do y'all remember Hallmark stores? And they had all these knick-knack stuff or whatever. I don't think they were called Hallmark stores. They were like the stationery store. I remember we had Forster Stationery, just different stationery stores. And they would have all these knick-knack, paddywhack stuff that I loved to just look at. Sometimes I would buy. Sometimes I would just look and see. I would look at the cars. I used to love the journals, all that. And then sometimes the strip malls might have a clothing store, like a Dress Barn or something like that. I would go in there. Or sometimes it might be a shoe store. I'm trying to remember the Shoe Town. Do y'all remember Shoe Town? Did y'all have a Shoe Town? But anyway, I would go in, look at shoes, whatever. So this one time, it was like the summer, I want to say. And I went to the grocery store with my mother, and she was like, you want to come in? I was like, no, I'm going to wait out here for you. Because I knew once she came to the car, I had to get out, help her with the groceries. When we got home, I had to help put away the groceries. So my thing was, why do I need to go and also buy them? So I'm good. You guys. So my mother's taking a long, and she would take a long time, like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, a long time in the grocery store because she would get everything we needed. And we always had a stocked kitchen. I went and I was like, oh, okay, here's the stationery store. So I went to the store and they had these other stores and I would just go in and just look around. I came out after a while, and where I thought the car was parked, it was not there. I went in the parking lot. I'm looking all around for my mother's car. I did not see it. I was like, I had that feeling again. She is not here. She left. I felt it. Like, I think my mother has left. So I went again. This is before cell phones. I got to the payphone because all like strip malls would have payphones at the end. So I walked down to the payphone, got my dime. Always kept a dime or a quarter, whatever the the payphone cost. Back then, as a kid, you always had that coin. You always had a dime. If it was a dime, you always had a dime. If it was a quarter, you always had a quarter. So I went to the payphone. I called my mother. I wasn't really, I knew she wasn't there, but I wasn't expecting her to be home already. She answers the phone. Hello? Mom? What? You're home? Yeah. What you doing? Where are you? I'm at the store. You left me. Well, when I came to the car, you weren't there, so I left. What you want me to do? Oh my goodness. I said, can you come back and get me? She was like, no, I'm putting away the groceries. You got to walk home. Y'all, I had to walk. I was 2 towns away from my house. I was by myself. I was under the age of 12 and I had to walk home. And I did. I had to go. I remember I was like, what? I had to walk over railroad tracks, all kind of stuff. It was great. Busy streets. I had to walk home. And when I got home, I didn't get in trouble. It was just business as usual. Like, you thought to do. I was like, if this is something, it was crazy. Oh my goodness. So I loved it. But do y'all remember back in the day before cell phones and everything? And you would be at a party and if your mother or your father was picking you up, well, my mother would do this. She would always say, just do collect, call, and I'll know you ready. So, cause she would always be on the phone with her sister, my aunt. And we didn't have two-way. So you had to do an emergency breakthrough. Do you remember emergency breakthroughs? And so you would have to call I forget how you did it. I think you called 0 or you called the number and then 0 or something. And the operator would come and they would interrupt the call and would say, it's an emergency breakthrough from, and you had to say your name. So you didn't have to say your name though. You could say, I'm ready to be picked up, it's me. Or mom, come get me, real quick. Cause it was only like just enough for a person to say their name, but people were slick and would give a sentence of what they needed that person to do. And then the person on the other end would deny the call. They would be like, no, I'm not going to accept it. Cause if they accepted it, it would be an extra fee on their phone bill at the end of the month. And it would be more than like a quarter. It'd be like $1 something, I think. So my mother would always not accept the call. Now, if they needed to talk to you, they would accept it and it would interrupt that call that they were on. And then they would start talking to you. So it was interesting back then. Do y'all remember that? Emergency breakthroughs before two-way was a thing? I remember when we got two-way, it was for my 16th birthday and I was home. I was on the phone. And I heard this clicking and I was like, I wonder what that is. And I didn't do anything about it. And then I heard it click again. And I said, ooh, don't tell me we got two-way. I clicked and it was another call. And I was like, what? That was a huge deal back in the day. Getting two-way, getting wireless, a cordless phone. Those things were the cat's meow back in the day. Do y'all remember that? If y'all have a funny story about growing up with your parents and crazy things they did, places they made you walk home from, or places they left you at, please leave a comment below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. This video is dedicated to Clarence Barnes Sr., my dad. All right, everyone. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Until we speak again, remain safe. And remember, this has been Real Talk with Coach Sherri.